Hopefully everyone can see my screen. I am sharing our presentation. So it should say Building Online Space for K-12 Learners. Dr. Erin Shaw, the program coordinator, and Ashley Cooksey, an adjunct instructor at UCA here in the College of Education. So I'm extremely excited. I know that I have my co-presenter Ashley in the room, but I also see one of my co-colleagues, Dr. Helen Hu also teaches in our program. So I'm super excited to have her here. And I know that Melissa is working behind the scenes, letting you guys in the waiting room. I was trying to see if there was a way I could, I don't know, disable the doorbell, but I don't see that. So I say we go ahead and begin. I'm sorry if that is distracting. Hopefully once everyone gets in here, we will have just a little bit less of that distraction. Okay, so I will go ahead and get started. I am Dr. Erin Shaw. I am an assistant professor here at UCA. I'm the program coordinator for two different programs. I coordinate the School Library Media program and the Instructional Technology program, which is what a lot of our information today is going to cover, is designing an online presence for K-12 learners. So just a little more about me. I spent 24 years in public schools here in Arkansas. I was a ninth grade science teacher for 7 years. And then I spent 17 years in school libraries, high school level, junior high level, and middle school. I've never taught anything lower than 5th grade. I am an accidental Sunday school teacher at our church. Thankfully, there's only 3 kids. That's the lowest I've gone, and it's only because one of them is my kid, but that's okay. I'm the mother of 3 boys. They are 20, 17, and 12 is the youngest now. So that's just a little about me. So I'm going to turn it over to my co-presenter, Ashley Cooksey, and then we're going to dive into building that online space for K-12 learners.
Hello, everyone. I am Ashley Cooksey, and I am an adjunct instructor at UCA in our instructional technology department, so the iTech program. Dr. Shaw is my program coordinator, and I have been in education for 10 years in K-12 schools. Longer than that outside of K-12. I spent 2 years as a 3rd grade teacher, 7 as a school librarian, and 1 as an instructional technology facilitator. And from there, I've led professional development around the country, as well as within our state of Arkansas. Typically, the professional development that I lead is for school librarian or in the field of instructional technology. I also have 2 kids. I have a 17-year-old and one that will be 16 in 2 weeks. They both enjoy the fact that I work in the field of online education because most of their classes now involve some type of online learning. So they come to me quite often for help with their online classes. And I've been able to, especially during our pandemic in the spring, was able to help a lot of our local educators facilitate some of their online coursework, which we'll see later today. As far as just additional things about me, I am an aspiring yoga instructor, and I do a lot with the Future Ready libraries and Future Ready instructional coaches as well. And then,
sorry, I should unmute. Thank you, Ashley. So we will very quickly, we'll talk about part of what we've done here at UCA in the College of Ed. We went ahead and put together several free online PDs for this summer because a lot of our professional development that was going to be offered in person in many places was canceled. So we realized that we had an opportunity to go ahead and capitalize on some of our programs and just make sure everybody knew what we have available. So we were asked to go ahead and share our graduate programs here in the College of Ed. Just again, to reiterate, library media and instructional technology are the two that I am in charge of, but all of the others are super fantastic. School counseling is right here next to me. We've got all of the leadership, school-based leadership, and then advanced studies and teacher leadership. But then if you're also interested in special education, endorsements, any of the reading, the dyslexia endorsements, all of those are housed here in the College of Ed. So we would love for anyone who is interested. At the end, we'll share your final link. It will be the professional development sign-in to get credit for the 2 hours. It will also have an evaluation of our session today. And then finally, there will be a link if you would like any more information from any of these different programs to make sure that you have an opportunity to do that. So Ashley, I'm going to turn it over to you. I think now we want to know who's out there and who's hanging out with us.
I bet it would help if I unmuted myself. So you should see my screen now for a tool that I like to use for online engagement. It's called Mentimeter. So if you'll open up a new tab on your computer, or you can even use your phone and just go to the website Menti, M-E-N-T-I, you'll see it at the top of the screen, and it'll ask for a code, and you'll enter the 6-digit code that you see here on the screen. And tell us who you are, where you're from, and what your role in education is. I saw some of you guys sharing that with us in the chat, but this will also allow us to kind of see where everyone is coming from as well. And I'm going to pull it up on my phone as well so I can share my information. What I like about Mentimeter to use in class, there are several different forms that you can set up, and this just has an open response to scroll. But if you notice in the bottom right hand corner, we can kind of see how many people have already responded. When I use this in class, it always throws students off when I say, okay, I'm still waiting on 2 people to answer. So that gives a really good idea of ensuring that you have student engagement when you use outside tools. And also, because it does not require a sign-in, it is SEPA and COPA compliant. Students do not have to give out any personal information. I see a lot of school districts that I've been in, Dr. Shaw. I don't know if you're able to kind of get an idea of who all we have in the program. It looks like we've got some instructional technology facilitators, elementary teachers, high school, concurrent credit.
Yes. So we've got, I think, 105 participants now in our session. So we've had our, or 109. How exciting. So in the chat, there have been a couple of questions. So let me read those while we're waiting on our last few. Sorry, I'm having technical challenges. I feel like I need my own media specialist here, but that's what I'm supposed to be, or I was. So Lena Perez asked, does it work just for you to see the answer in Mentimeter?
Yes, so on the instructor site, Mentimeter, by the way, is free, and you're allowed just a few slides, but as you refer people to it, it will allow you to build more. And I believe there is kind of like a free scribe for education if you sign up using a school email address. But luckily I have 8,000 email addresses, so I just keep recommending to myself to use this tool. And on my end, it will show up as well. And what's really cool is I have this set to be instructor led, so students can't go to the next slide until I do. And after the presentation is done, I'll receive an email about 10 minutes after I end the presentation that includes a download link, and I can actually download all of these slides with responses as PDF files. And it stays that way within Mentimeter, which is the instructor side of it.
Thank you. That was excellent. So we've got 82 in there, and I know some are still putting those in. We do have a lot of Conway people. I'm excited.
Yes.
And then I saw some. Oh,
and if you are late jumping in and you're not sure what we're doing, this is just sharing who you are, where you're from, and what your role in education is. You'll go to the website at the top of the screen, menti.com, and enter the 6-digit code. And then it should provide you with a space to be able to type your response in. It works on computer desktop as well as on your phone, which is nice. If you're an instructor, then you can use your phone to monitor while students are also entering their information.
I just saw Margie, school librarian, that I know. I've missed Margie. I think she was at AIM last week. So I'm excited to see some names of people that I know. I've missed seeing people. I'm just going to say that. I'm sitting in my office all by myself. So Jamie just asked, does menti.com work within Google Classroom?
So it does not embed in Google Classroom as an extension or an app, if that's what you're asking. It actually just looks like slides, and when you click present, it comes up on your screen. So if you'll notice, I have a tab to the left here at the top of my screen. That's my Mentimeter screen, and then right next to it is the presentation screen. So it is a separate program, but it's super easy to run just as, you know, a tab on your computer as well, but it doesn't embed in Google Classroom or Google Slides. You have to run it separately.
Yes. So that was good. Yes, Margie did the Charlie Mae Simon one, but I was doing a different session at the same time, so I didn't get to come this time to her session. So Elise was asking, does the same thing happen in Schoolology about whether or not Menti would work? I don't know that it would embed straight in there, kind of like Google Classroom, but
it's a complete standalone, so it's not going to embed in anything else.
Right. Oh, so Karen.
Oh, wow, there's someone from Honduras. Hi. Kindergarten in Honduras.
That's so exciting. We have gone international. We've got Hebrew.
Okay. We've got about 90, so I think that's pretty close to where we are with our enrollment. I know that that's not quite everyone, but this screen for me I'm not going to move it until we're ready to use the next one. So don't close out of your tab for Menti, just leave it open there, because we'll have another question here in a little bit. If you do accidentally close out, don't worry. I'll pull, when the screen pulls back up, it'll have the website and the code back there that stays there the entire time you're presenting from Menti. So it will always be there. No worries. And I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Shaw.
Okay, let me make sure I have too many windows, too many things. So are you guys now seeing Universal Design for Learning?
No, you have to reshare your screen.
Yes, I do.
I didn't stop mine, so you can.
Okay, got it. There we go. Okay, so we're going to move into, we've got a few topics that we want to talk about today when we are building that online space for K-12 learners. And some of these, or many of these, will actually transfer also to adult learners. So even if you teach, you know, at a higher level, but we can go all the way down, you know, to kindergarten and pre-K. We're just going to talk about some different strategies. And one of the very first things that we like to talk about is Universal Design for Learning. So we're going to talk just a little bit about that. Then Ashley's going to move into some classroom management strategies. And then the final part of our presentation today will be engagement, student engagement, communication, building those collaborative communities to make sure that our students are successful. Should we have to go to another alternative method of instruction, you know, during the same pandemic or a different one, but hopefully it will help everyone leave here at the end of 2 hours with some new strategies, or also some ideas where you guys share with us, because we are always looking to learn as well. So
Dr. Shaw,
yes.
Share your screen.
Oh.
I bet they would like to see what you're talking about.
You know, I bet they would. That would be, yes. Okay, so yeah, I forgot that little share. There we are. So here was my, my slide, sorry.
And that's super important in your online learning environment is authenticity. You know that happens in your real life classroom, and it's totally okay to have those technical blunders in your online classroom.
It is, but you also need to make sure that you have those learners. Well, even in the you know, regular classroom, I always would find 1 or 2 students that I would put in charge of finding things. Like, they were my people that would let me know when I misspelled a word or did anything. And I was actually very thankful, because if I was teaching the same thing 6 periods a day, I didn't want, you know, whatever to be up there wrong all day long. So I tried to pick someone out kind of early on. So it does help, though, to have that trust where somebody is not afraid to let you know when you have not done it correctly. I do know, as a first-year teacher, I had the hardest time admitting that I didn't know everything that I was supposed to know in physical science. But I've come a long way in 27 years, so I feel pretty good about it now. But thank you for pointing out. So we'll start first with a systemic barrier in education. Universal Design for Learning is it's an educational framework based on research that guides the development of flexible learning environments and learning spaces that could accommodate individual learning differences. So if we look at this image, I'm sure a lot of you guys have actually seen the image before, but I'm going to have you guys brainstorm in 5 minutes. I'm going to put you into a breakout room very early. You're not going to know the other people, so it's just going to be a random selection, but your task is going to be to identify in the 2 pictures. So you're going to kind of want to look at it now, or if you've got a second, if you want to screenshot this so you can look at those, or you can Google, you know, systemic barriers in education, and you'll probably find the same image. But we want to think about what's going on the left side. You know, basically the idea is these people are at a baseball game, and nobody intended anyone not to be able to see. They just wanted to put a fence up, you know, to show where the outer limit of the field was. So I guess, you know, if a ball went over, it was an automatic home run. But if you notice in the first picture, everybody has the same size box. And in the second one, it's a little bit different. So in your breakout room, you are going to compare and think about what might be some other systemic barriers we might have in our educational classrooms, especially online. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes. You can kind of brainstorm, try to come up with 2 barriers that you can see within our current teaching, and decide if you can identify those. So I'm trying to do this at the same time. Ashley, I probably should have had you put together the breakout room for this one, just because now I'm struggling to find where my tool was. Hold on. Can you tell we've not done this before?
I was going to say, I don't know if I'm any better to do a breakout because I've not ever used Zoom for a breakout.
Here it is. Nope, I had it up. I had it all ready to go, and then I lost it. So I found it again. Okay, so you will be in a room with 4 to 5 people in your room, okay? So I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes. So right now it is 1:24 p.m. So at 1:30, I will set everyone to come back to the room, the main room, and we're going to share out. See if you and your other participants can identify 2 barriers that you would see in a K-12 online environment. So I'm going to create the rooms and send you guys to those. And so it should give you an invitation to join your breakout room. And I'll see you guys back at 1:30. Does anyone want to share any barriers that they thought might occur? And you can either do it in the chat, or if you want to unmute your mic, we would love to hear from any of you guys as well. But let's just, I don't know, just share a little bit if anyone is brave.
I'll go ahead and share.
Thank you. All right, Jessica.
You're welcome. So the people I was with, we were in the other session with Amy Thompson and I forgot her other name, but Amy. And so we ended up being in the same breakout room. I thought that was funny. But anyway, we talked about, obviously technology would be a barrier. Not all kids have the tools or materials that they may need. And then we also mentioned, even if they do have it, like the knowledge of that technology. So those were the kind of the 2, and I guess you could call them the same thing, but even if they have a Chromebook or they have an iPad or whatever, they may not know exactly how to maneuver everything. So, and then the parents too. What if the parents don't know, and then it's a whole nother nightmare and all that. So that's what we discussed.
Well, you guys are spot on, because that's actually something I think Ashley is going to talk about at some point when we get into ours. So, so Janine was at, so I'm trying to read the chat, and it's very, very, very long. So I'm sorry, some people got kicked out of the breakout. The breakout that was very easy in the tools. If you go in, I probably should have played with it before, and that is something that I definitely recommend in an online setting. It takes so much more pre-preparation than it does just walking into a regular classroom. So that was something that I will fully admit I should have gone ahead and tried that, but it was fairly easy. Let me see if I can see. I was reading. So Tracy was saying the hotspots were located in a parking lot at high school and elementary parking lots, and there was one at a local restaurant. The part of the barrier though is, you know, if kids have to wait until their parents get home to get to these parking lots, we live 10 miles out. So I know when you were saying not everyone has access, during AMI and everything, I was already teaching from home online a lot of times, but then I had a college student trying to come, and so he was trying to use our Wi-Fi at the same time I had an 11th grader and a 6th grader, and that's, you know, that is a huge barrier, is knowing whether or not, you know, do your students have their devices. That was the other hard thing. I didn't think to go and pick up a Chromebook for my youngest son. He ended up having to work a lot on an iPad, but if I had that to do over with again, I would have definitely done something a little bit different. So Wi-Fi came up again, computer literacy. So I think that kind of goes back to, just because our students have the devices doesn't mean they have the know-how. Students adjusting, no computer technology at home. The at-home support, that is huge as well. Availability of technology, internet, parent involvement, time management, and self-discipline. Those are huge factors when you get into an online learning environment. I think a lot of our experiences in the K-12 classrooms, especially, even before I left Greenbrier, I was at the middle school for 15 years. Everybody had Google Classroom by then, but so many people were delivering one assignment, and then they had all the students in there pretty much on the device working on the same thing at the same time. So you could offer that support, but that self-motivation for a middle school student, it's probably not totally built there yet. And there's a lot of students that check out once they get kind of frustrated if they don't get a response immediately. So those are definite barriers. So Lisa's group, they discussed a lack of support structure, devices, and economics. Parent support, poverty is such a big barrier. As Jamie pointed out, not having someone available to help with self-contained students, you know, the parents not necessarily knowing how to help or understanding the instructions. This is, yes, it's, I love what Leanne said, give yourself some grace. I think we were all just trying to manage at that point in time. So I'm not going to spend too much time. Oh, breakout room 7 pointed out internet access and non-English speakers. Those are just such huge problems. So we don't want to get bogged down too much. So here is the last image. Probably most of you guys have seen the first 2 images, but I feel like that third one, let me make sure, is my screen sharing? Can everyone see the third one? Okay, good, perfect. You guys are fantastic. So this is the goal when we talk about universal design for learning, is removing those barriers. So thank you, Ashley. She was sending me a text. I thought, wait a minute, what is that? So the first picture, you know, everyone has the exact same support. They're treated equally. Second one, if we're striving to make sure that we teach all students fairly, some students need a different level of support. Those are our accommodations, you know, giving a student extra time, printing extra worksheets, maybe they need large print. But the third one is what we really want to strive for, where we've taken away the need for additional supports. It's eliminated altogether because that systemic barrier is removed. There is still a fence there to show, you know, the baseball group where the outer limit is, but those visibility issues have been completely removed. So we need to think of ways when we start to design our online environments, a way that we can remove that need for those additional supports. So instead we're offering an environment that is useful for all. So I think this was Ashley, what you were saying. Yes, one of them didn't show up. So I'm going to very quickly just play this little video. Let me see if I can get it.
Hi, welcome to Shoe Town. Do you need a new pair of shoes?
Sure, I'm looking for a new pair of running shoes.
I've got just what you need. I'll be right back. Here you go.
Thanks. These won't fit. They're too big.
Well, that's no good. Let me get another pair. How about these?
Oh, these are still too big. I wear a size 10.
I'm sorry, sir. Come again?
I said I wear a size 10 shoe.
I'm afraid I don't follow you.
My shoe size, it's 10. You know, like
The size of shoes I wear?
I'm afraid you must be mistaken, sir. All of our shoes are the same size. Here, let me get a different shoe.
Is it going to be the same size as the first pair?
Well, of course.
This isn't going to work. I think I'm going to go.
Wait, we got a new shipment coming in. Oh well.
We wouldn't go to a shoe store that only sold one size of shoe. So why do we try to teach students only one way? Universal Design for Learning is about teaching all students, not just the average students. To do this, we need to represent information in multiple ways, give students opportunities to choose how to express themselves and show us what they've learned, and make the learning engaging and relevant for everyone. We need to listen to our students' needs, cater our teaching styles to their learning styles, and make sure they stay engaged. By doing so, we'll create a better learning experience for everyone.
So that's actually. Sorry, let me.
If there is one fact that all classrooms have in common, it is that they are filled with a variety of learners.
Sorry. Okay, so now that I have given away a little bit extra, that was actually a video that was shared for a course that I taught this past summer from Dr. Who, Dr. Helen Who. She's in our audience. Thank you, Dr. Who. I thought that that was just a good visual just to kind of get started in what UDL is striving for. And I'm not going to play the second video, the difference between UDL and differentiated instruction. We are going to share our presentation. It's a great 2-minute video too, but I feel like we're going a little too long to make sure that we get finished by our 3 o'clock time. So I am going to just plow forward just a little bit and share with you guys the CAST website, the UDL guidelines. Designing a true online environment, you need to think about setting your norms, creating that space, but you also, and those are things that Ms. Cooksey is going to go through in just a few minutes, but you also need to think about removing those systemic barriers from any of those students, our SPED learners, our ESL learners, our dyslexic learners, our ADD learners, our students that really like to watch a video, but others that want to read the text. So the whole idea of Universal Design for Learning is putting together, let me see if I can share this a little bit larger. This is the website directly. So we want to provide multiple means of engagement, and this is the whys of learning. And so access falls right along here. We want to build across engagement, representation, and action and expression. The whole idea is, the bottom line, what we are trying to do is create expert learners. This is our main goal. We want all of their learning to be purposeful and motivated. We want our students to be resourceful and knowledgeable, and they eventually need to have strategic and goal-directed actions and expressions where they can show us what they have learned. So this is just a fantastic website, and we've got all of our resources in there toward the end, but we're going to do a quick poll, and we're going to think about accessibility for our learners. So let me see if I can find our polling.
Dr. Shaw, while you're pulling
Yes.
that up, it looks like Michelle Walton Boyd has her hand raised. Michelle,
Oh.
if you still have a question, go ahead and unmute
And ask, please.
and ask.
She may have put it in the chat. I'm not sure. I'm not doing, this is very hard to have all of these different places, but I'll mute for a second.
And I know I've accidentally raised my hand before when I was playing with a little feature. I was trying to click on stuff. So Michelle, if you have your questions still just in the chat, or unmute and ask us.
So I'm going to launch the poll while it's going, and so everybody should be able to vote. Basically, we just wanted to know, and I probably should have done this before I shared really what UDL was, accessibility in an online environment. Is this something that you consider when you design your lessons? And we can't see who's voting for what, so, you know, be honest with yourself and think about. So far, so one of the polling options, I don't know how many schools are going to be allowed to use Zoom just because of accessibility issues and privacy issues for K-12 learners. But it's got some great features, and I really like the polling because I can see that there's 105 people. So I don't know, can you guys see the poll on my screen?
It pops up individually as a little pop-up window, but it shows us how many people are responding to the question and then a percentage for each of the
Okay. Is it, but it is on, so right
It's
now,
on
I can,
individual.
okay, I can see 89 out of 105 have done that, and it's showing me how long it's taken people. So far it looks like 66% say yes, absolutely. 26% or 24 said, you know, a little bit. 6% said not really, and 1% said no. And I really feel like had I, we know that the answer should be yes, but a lot of times, and especially, you know, when the pandemic hit and everything just went online, you know, at the drop of a hat, without a lot of pre-planning, it's very hard to really have wrapped your mind, I think, around what all of the issues would be. But I feel like going back into our fall semester, many of us now know that there are some different things that we would do differently. And accessibility, when you look at the UDL guidelines, is one of the first things that you really need to think about. If you had a student that needed a screen reader, or that just preferred like a podcast of what you did, or do you need closed captions on your videos? Because a lot of us have gone to screencasting tools, but we forget to go ahead and include a transcript so students can go back and read at the same time, you know, what is going on. Other accessibility, though, does come with those tech tools. I know that at first, some of the schools that weren't one-to-one, they had all of these Chromebook carts sitting there just empty, waiting. And then people had to go back and check those out. And then they had to figure out what their policies would be, how to check it out, you know, who it went to. What are they going to also offer hotspots and things? So these are just all kinds of accessibility things we need to think about to make sure that we've removed any of those barriers. So I highly recommend, if you've never looked at the CAST website, that you do so. the thing that I like most, so right here, if I click on optimize relevance, value, and authenticity, you need to also be thinking about, being culturally relevant and responsive within your practices, making sure that you are offering different racial and cultural and ethnic and gender groups within the materials that you're doing. You also need to make sure that you're providing those tasks that allow for active participation, exploration, experimentation. So we need to be very intentional with our planning. So I'm going to go back to this one. Ashley, I'm going to try and get this turned over to you. Another tool that's great is to really just kind of look at this stair-step graphic. You need to start with SMART goals, and hopefully if you've been in K-12 for any period of time, you know that SMART goals are specific and measurable and achievable. They need to be relevant and time-bound. Your learner variability is where you need to think about all of your different learners, all of those barriers that may come into play, so you can plan for those when you're designing your assessment and figuring out what methods and materials and media to do. And then finally, when you can teach and assess. So you want all of the planning done first, and then don't forget to reflect at the very end. So that's just kind of a quick and dirty UDL that we need to think about when we're designing or building those K-12 spaces. Ashley, did you see, is there any other like specific question yet? Because I don't see my chat right now. I think I've got different floating things going on.
There's just kind of a random discussion.
Oh, I see these. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just asking, and they asked for the code on Mentimeter again, and when I pull that back up, I'll reshare that. You don't need it right this moment.
That's great. So I'm seeing, hopefully, and we will be able to also print our chat, but a lot of people asked about transcripts. Putting your videos, your screencasting videos into YouTube is a good tool. Now, YouTube is not perfect in creating a closed caption. Or were you going to cover that, Ashley?
Well, I was going to say I will share about that too, but YouTube does have a closed captioning. It does not, however, have the "I'm from Arkansas" accent generator.
Right, but the nice thing is you can go in and edit the transcript or the closed captioning that comes up with that. It's a great place to do that. If you type a script, that's one of the best ways. If you are putting together one of those screencasts, either doing a text to or a speech to text one. But like Ashley said, you do have to be very careful with enunciation and making sure that it gets the correct one. Now, Zoom, if you do pay for, there's a business or a pro version that does, these recordings do offer, you can print the chat transcript, but then you can also create a transcript to go with the recorded video. So those are just some great ideas. So if you can only use Google Meet, you might need to, to look at different ways that you can transcribe those, because many districts won't allow you guys to use Zoom. So those are just, typing it out. It does. Jennifer was asking, do you just type it out? That is one of those things. So once you have it, though, hopefully you can reuse that.
Also, I noticed someone said that they use the text-to-speech feature in Microsoft, and you can also do that in a Google Doc. It has speech-to-text, so I know if I'm going to upload my transcript, I will open it in a separate window and have it speech to text while I'm recording. and then it will have a transcript there, because I'm really bad to type out a transcript to read, but I sound super fake when I read directly from a transcript. And I don't want to lose the authenticity of me actually teaching the students and not reading to the students.
That's true. And if you do need translate, Microsoft tools, they're a little bit ahead of the game for Google, but Google is catching up. I will say that. Yes, Jennifer asked, a lot of times you can edit your transcript, especially I know through YouTube. And Jamie pointed out a very good point that it's accessible through a cell phone service rather than Wi-Fi for those kids who can't rely on cell phones. And Karen asked, yes, you guys will get a copy of our presentation at the end, and you'll be able to view it and look back at everything. Okay, so sorry. So Ashley, I think that is over to you, and we're already almost an hour in, so I don't know where you want to start, but I'm gonna turn it over. So I'll stop sharing, or do you want me to stop sharing, right?
Either way, I can override you. Okay. I think maybe we'll see.
You are
right. So, and I did unmute myself this time, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to dive into online classroom management. And with this, I wanted to begin with a quote from Emily Kirsch that is from an article, and you'll have the link to the article in our resources at the end of the presentation. And in this article, she said she noticed that a lot of teachers have a hard time realizing that the structures you set up in your classroom to promote student independence can actually be transferred into your online world. And so to begin to set up some of those norms needs to begin day one, preferably before day one. Typically in an online setting beforehand, you would send a welcome email to let your students know how to log in, the expectation of when you would be online, and for how long, so that they know if you're meeting synchronously or if it's asynchronous, what the expectation would be for their logging in to your setting, to your system. And she gives the just 5 very easy steps to follow that you want to establish your structure and expectations early on. And one of those very easy ways that you can do that is with your syllabus. And I know if you're elementary, you're probably thinking, I don't do a syllabus. And we talk about this in the online course design class that I teach, that in an online learning environment, it's still important to have a syllabus, even if you teach kindergarten, because that information can be provided to your parents. And it may include like your class, think about when you're in classroom, so your classroom procedures in your physical space. If you're elementary, you're going to teach kids how to come into the room, where to sit, how to sharpen their pencil, where they're going to turn their work. All of those are your procedures, and that can be set in your expectations right away in your syllabus. In a typical syllabus, you would include like your contact info, your classroom information, the meeting times if you're meeting synchronously, expectations for participation, student instructor interaction, your attendance policy, and grading. So all of that would go into your syllabus that you would provide. And like I said, early elementary, that I would provide online in my course for my parents more so than my students. My students would probably get a 1-page more graphic information that would tell them a little bit, maybe like the meet the teacher and where they would go online. When you're building your class and your lessons, you want to make sure that you follow the same format for your lessons so that students know what to expect. Not being face-to-face with the instructor can be confusing for some students, especially when they need to follow a routine. I remember in the chat when we were talking about some of those barriers is many students don't have time management skills. So if you have the same format for your lessons, then they will know what to expect week to week for their learning. consider a flipped instructional model, and that is where not flipped learning, but flipped instruction. And that's a little bit different. That would require you to do your lesson and film it ahead of time to provide that content to your students. That way they would have it ahead of time so that when you are meeting face to face, there's less actual you providing instruction and more small group intervention, providing support for students who need it, and just reinforcement of skills. Making sure that your online instruction is accessible for all, and Dr. Shaw talked about that when she was presenting for UDL, of what you can do to make sure that some of those barriers are removed for all of your students. Using a program like Described and Captioned Media is a really great program. It's free for all teachers as well. Some of their videos are super outdated, but not only does it provide instructional videos that are captioned, but they also have services that will help you describe the video. So if you have someone that's visually impaired, if you've never seen a described movie, it tells you everything that is happening in the film on top of the actual dialogue that's happening. So if someone walks across the room, it's going to say walking across the room because they can't see what's happening. And then also having strong communication channels, which is what I would set up also in my syllabus so that students knew how to communicate with each other, how to communicate with me, the expectation for me to communicate with parents. So all of those are set up ahead of time in a multimodal form. So I'm not just going to be, we use Blackboard at UCA for our learning management system. So I don't just communicate within Blackboard. We also use email, Flipgrid, which I'll talk about. We've used Wakelet, Padlet, and some people even, my students have my cell phone number, so they've text, they can call. And I know that for K-12, a lot of parents use Remind. If you're using Google Classroom or Schoology, those communication channels are also built in there. So making sure that parents and students have your information in different formats is also very helpful. And I do have a Mentimeter survey here. So those of you that were asking for that same code again, you should have it now on your screen. So if you missed the first Menti, just go to menti.com and use that 6-digit code. If you still have your screen up, you'll see that it came up to a survey question. So do you already have clearly defined norms for your online learning environment? And you should have yes, they work great, yes, that they didn't work, no, not at all, or not yet, I'm working on it. And as it comes up, it's going to kind of fill in our pie chart here. It should have changed colors so we can see the pieces of our pie. We're just going to have a light purple pie today.
Ashley, somebody asked in the chat about the flipped model. Do you want to talk
about flipped model?
Yeah, flipped
yes.
Instruction.
Yes, and we cover flipped instruction in my online teaching and learning class, because when you're thinking about online instruction, there are different forms. Most of you, if you're in K-12 now, are probably used to a blended form of online instruction using a pseudo learning management system like Google Classroom, where you post some assignments, but you're still providing face-to-face instruction. That would be a blended model. You also have a fully online model where everything is on built within your learning management system. You may meet sometimes synchronously. So all of our programs at UCA for our department are fully online. We don't ever meet at UCA face-to-face for my classes. Most of my courses are set up to be asynchronous, where students work at their own pace. The good thing about that is that I can build everything ahead of time and have it ready, but I don't present all of the coursework as the very first day. I only release a few modules at a time. So even though students can work at their own pace, they can't complete the entire course in 2 days. They're going to have to kind of pace themselves with the instruction. Flipped instruction means that you put all of your content at the front. So you would provide students with an instructional video, preferably from you, because you want to make sure the instructor presence is available. Any reading assignment that they may have, you can provide additional supplemental materials such as TED Talks, instructional YouTube videos. I used a podcast last week, and every single one of my students said that was the greatest thing ever. I absolutely loved having the podcast instead of a video content to listen to. I had one student that downloaded it and listened to it on her morning walk. So students have a multimodal way to get the content. I did have one student with a podcast that didn't listen to the podcast, but actually just read the transcript. And so those are just different ways to put the content at the front. So students interact with the content first. And then as you progress through the unit or the module that you're teaching, when students are actually meeting with you, so in the flipped model, they interact with the content first, so that when they're presented with the instructor can then provide additional support for students who may not have understood the content. And those students that did understand the content can then move on. So it's a great way to flip your instruction online again, because that provides students with not only the content that they can take at their own pace, but they know that if they're struggling with the content, you are going to be there to support them. Whereas in a typical classroom and face-to-face brick and mortar, most of the time you give all of the instruction and then students go home to do the homework and don't have that support with the homework. Flipped instruction turns that around. And that way they know that you will come in with support after they've interacted with the content.
So I'm not sure if I'm saying Ms. Carmichael's name right. Kanasha said she didn't think that that would work necessarily with K-4 students. And I was just thinking, that was one of the things, and I only went down to 5th grade. So I don't know how much different 5th and 4th grade are, or 3rd, but we eventually flipped the introduction to the library, because when all of the students were in 5th grade, and then later we lost 5th grade and only had 6th grade, I eventually realized I was taking up so much time going over where everything was. So I finally did kind of a virtual tour of the library that the students got to watch the day before they came to the library the first time. And for me, that was a version of flipped instruction, because then when they got to me, I just went over a couple of minutes of things, and then they had time to go and get their books and things. So, yeah, so Janine was saying, oh, is it Kanasha? Oh, good. Okay. Oh, thank you. But Janine was saying that videos might work for kids, or read alouds would be great for K-4. So yes, you might even provide a book read aloud, and then when you all met together, the students could come back with maybe some questions or a connection that they had. And Lisa was still asking, what was the video resource called? Describe.
Oh, that's described and captioned media. It's dcmp.com.
I'm going to type.
We actually had the director of their education services as a guest speaker. Dr. Shaw and I spoke with her at the AASL conference in November. But I will actually add that to our resource link at the end of our presentation as well. And
Perfect.
That way it's there and you're not trying to jot down all of the resources that we mentioned.
Yes.
I will add that in there.
Yes. Well,
Okay, so
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, we've had about 75 people respond, and it looks like the overall majority does not have clearly defined norms in their online learning environment, but they are working on it. and then some did not have them at all. And we had only about 17 say that they either had them and they worked great, or they had them but they were ineffective. So setting those norms early on is super important. Did you have something as well, Dr. Shaw?
Nope. Nope.
So for littles, and I know that was just a question that was asked, is how would that work for a flipped learning environment? And I think that it would work just to, especially if you were providing the instruction in a video format, to do your lesson ahead of time, even if it was letter lessons. We actually just built a syllabus in one of my classes, and I have about 4 kindergarten and first grade teachers, and that was a lot of their information was that they would provide the video and maybe like a graphic ahead of time that students could kind of listen to and interact with on their own. And then when they met face to face, they would be able to reinforce what the students had learned. So it can work in elementary. It would just be a little bit, it is time consuming for an online teacher because you do record your lesson ahead of time. And I'll share a little bit about how to do that when I talk about engagement at the end. These are some great posters too that were designed by Bunsey that are just kind of I can statements. And they're free and we do have them linked, but this is an easy way to begin your norms, especially for elementary when you are getting ready to set up a face-to-face session with them. Just some I can statements. And I saw in March and April, as people were beginning to transition online and were struggling with student engagement, something that was similar to this, but it was make sure that when you are meeting in Google Meets or Zoom that your background is clean and maybe a blank wall behind you. There's no pets around you. Your brothers and sisters can't be there. And it was just a big list of negatives. And in a real household, that's probably not very conducive to learning, especially if you have multiple children in a classroom. That's very hard. So when you start out with expectations that automatically put all of those negative connotations at the front, it really turns students off and brings a negative aspect to meeting face-to-face online. When they're having to think, well, I can't do that today because my sister's home taking care of us and I've got a little sister and, all of these things that are happening. But if you start out with I can statements that are very basic and very simple, like just finding a place to sit at a table or desk where my computer and iPad can stay in one spot and not move around. That's a very easy norm to start your class with. And that may be and you'll see some of my tutorial videos that I've done are in the backyard. I've actually met with a class in my closet before because I have a 17-year-old son and he had 2 or 3 friends over and they were playing video games. If you've ever been in a house where there were 4 teenage boys playing video games, it was really loud. There was not a place for me to meet. So I cleared out a spot in my closet and was able to meet there, and making sure that they're not eating or drinking during their class, which, they wouldn't do in your classroom anyway. So just really easy I can statements and setting those expectations ahead of time can help make them seamless. Again, this is going to be in your links at the end of the presentation. And they also have one for, I think it was Zoom Meet for a virtual author visit. And there were just a couple of different ones. And I want to say that they also had them in Spanish as well. But these are pretty easy to design too. So when you set your norms, having this visual somewhere where students can easily access it and sharing it before your class meets. And I know the question comes up, what happens when students refuse to listen, participate, or work? And that's a very valid question. When that happens, you need to know what your school has that you can fall back on. Every student at the beginning of the year gets a student handbook, and typically those are signed by the student and the parent saying that they will follow those rules. So what is in your student handbook that can help cover you for your online teaching class for your expectations. Also, what is available to as in your syllabus, include a statement of integrity saying that students are going to be responsible for their learning and that they agree to put their best foot forward. If that's in your syllabus, that expectation is set ahead of time, and you can fall back on that, referring it back to the students. Hey, you knew at the beginning of the year, this was in our syllabus, we talked about this, this is what I expected, for both you and for the student as well. So even that statement of integrity for the expectation that they can get from you. So for example, one of my statements of integrity and expectation for me is that I will respond to emails within 24 hours. So that gives me time to respond to the email. And students know it might not be right away because I do have other classes that meet. So that I can refer back to that, as well as my acceptable use policy for the school. So we have a poll about the acceptable use policy before I talk about that. And hey, there we go. Mine popped up. So your polling question should say, ask if you have read your district's acceptable use policy.
I like the anonymity of the polling. It's a safe space to admit what you don't know. We don't know what we don't know until we don't know it.
Right.
I love seeing, we've got 86 people who've already responded, and very quickly can see, a little over half have read theirs, but for the most part, the other
30%.
36%, yeah, just haven't, or aren't sure if they have.
We've got so far 90 who voted, and I think we have a little over 100 people in our room, so I'll give just a few more seconds. If you haven't responded, have you read your district's acceptable use policy?
Ashley, in the chat, I think I typed it in wrong. What was the DC, what was the website of the lady that came and guest spoke to your classroom, your online teaching, or I think it was your
It was online online teaching and learning class.
Okay, so 6373 for that one.
Yes, 6373. It should be dcmp.com or .org. I'll have to make sure if it's .com or .org, but I will put that in our resources, and when Dr. Shaw presents in just a little bit, so my screen's not showing, I'll double check on that to make sure that, oh, hey, it's this. It's dcmp.org.
Oh, okay.
.org. Sorry.
So I typed it in wrong, sorry.
Yes, I thought I had a business card from them sitting on my desk, but I
Yes.
have a first aid kit from them sitting on my desk. Okay, so it does look like about 34% either don't know, haven't read, or are not even sure what an acceptable use policy is. And I'm going to go ahead and end this poll, Dr. Shaw.
Yeah.
And so your acceptable use policy, this is sort of from Wikipedia. I tweaked just a few things in it. Is your policy of acceptable use or fair use. It's a set of rules that's written by your district, probably by administrators and your IT people. Some districts involve teachers on a committee to write the acceptable use policy. It restricts the ways in which the network or system may be used, and it sets guidelines as to how it should be used. So it's probably somewhere in your student or teacher handbook. Generally all teachers have to sign it, and all students have to sign it before they're allowed access to the internet. Supposedly, it's signed annually. Many districts will also, when you log into a desktop, and even some on Chromebooks or mobile tablets, when you sign in using your school provided credentials, it will pop up with the acceptable use policy, and you have to check that you agree. A lot of these policies are a gigantic list of don't share your personal information, don't use the internet for cheating, don't do so. That, and some of them can be very legalese. So students and parents may not know what they're agreeing to. So the job that you have to do we have time for that, Dr. Shaw?
I think we just assign them that.
Okay.
For,
That is what I thought. So your job, we were going to spend just a few minutes doing it, but we want to make sure that we present all of our content as well. So make a note for yourself. Your job is to find your acceptable use policy and read it. In the state of Arkansas, if I'm not mistaken, I know that the student handbook has to be posted on your school's website. So check there, because your acceptable use policy should be in your student handbook and your teacher handbook. And it's one of those things that our district every year went over, meaning that they would like, hey, here's your acceptable use policy on page 87 of your teacher handbook, sign it and turn it in. So making sure that you read what's in your acceptable use policy, and I read for the students as well, and kind of highlight statements. That way, when it comes to those students refusing to listen or participate or work, I can fall back on that and say, hey, you guys signed that acceptable use policy. You've read the student handbook and agreed to the student handbook as well as your parents. I had that statement of integrity at the beginning of class that you agreed to. So, you know, it's your job to be a student, and you know, I don't like to refer for disciplinary action, but if that's where it is, then that's where it is. So there is another side to acceptable use policies, is a responsible use policy, and it outlines how students should act online. It typically promotes positive behaviors, expectations, and guidelines. So they don't diminish your creativity, they'll define the ownership. So what can students do? Well, if they're in a computer science class, they can design websites. If they're in a class that is, I did it for my school library, one of the things that we did was share globally. So we would meet with like Skype with a Scientist or Grid Pals, where we interacted with students from other schools. So it brought in more than just our classroom, and that was defining ownership of their learning.
Ashley,
Yes.
just real fast, I was going to say, so in the chat, they were talking about Google Classroom. Now you can block the student from communicating with anyone but the teacher if they're disruptive. And then Jennifer was saying that the texts recommend altering the settings where students can comment on posts made by the teacher, but just not start them left and right. And that really goes back to that responsible use policy. That was one of the biggest things that didn't work for me. We were doing kidblog.org with 6th grade classrooms. And at first we did not have our settings to where we needed to monitor the posts. We thought the students would know what the difference between a social post and an academic post, and we did not. So that's what Ashley's going to cover right here.
Okay.
We did not cover our expectations, and so we learned that we had to back up and start with what was responsible use, not using text lingo, you know, not being mean, you know, on in our online setting, which was private. You know, only our course could see it. We did not have it set globally, but within the own classroom, it didn't do that. So Ashley, I'll let you finish that one. Sorry.
No, that's part of your expectations is it's teaching them, you know, digital natives versus digital learners. We hear a lot that the students that we have now are digital natives. They know how to use technology. Well, sure, they know how to use technology. Most of them can pick up a phone, you know, when they're a year old and get to YouTube. But do they know how to use technology for learning? And that's a big thing with online education, is making sure that the students can interact with your content as well. They might be digital natives, but they don't learn digitally. They need the technical support. They need learning support. They need support with creativity to encourage them to explore different technology tools and ways to present information. And then when that doesn't work and they break down crying, they're going to need emotional support too. So they just need that additional support. And those are some of the norms that you have to set with your class. Something I always did, Dr. Shaw mentioned KidBlog. I didn't use KidBlog, but in our library catalog, students could leave book reviews. And that was something I had to model of. A book review is not going to be a great book. I liked it. So we spent a lot of time modeling what would I include in a book review? What's helpful to include in a book review? And so when you're thinking about online instruction and your students interacting with each other, what is helpful to include? And thinking about the Mentimeter that we did, where you typed in who you are, where you're from, what's your name. I do those with students, and things like that, especially when I do it with high school. And I always say, don't be the one jerk that ruins it for everyone. But the good thing about Mentimeter when I use it is it has a profanity filter, and you can filter it in multiple languages, which is nice because we have several different language speakers here where I was teaching. So, just thinking about that, and it would come up with like a random, the text, the $, asterisk, whatever. And I would say, okay, someone's trying to be the person that ruins this for everyone. When you're when you're engaging your students with tools that they really like and enjoy, they're not going to put up with that. So thinking about how can you set those norms ahead of time, and not just completely and abruptly ending communication for that student, because then what is the student learning? They're learning that they can act up, they get kicked out of class, and they don't have to participate. So setting those norms ahead of time, maybe for the students that continually struggle with that behavior, pulling into small groups and making them interact in a smaller group rather than with the entire class. So just think about how you want to set up those norms and what your expectations will be. And now I'm going to turn it to Dr. Shaw. Oh, no. Do you want to do the share and tell before we move on, Dr. Shaw? You want to unmute yourself, hon?
Man, I was talking such goodness. So I just put in our poll in there. So I think if we give ourselves about 3 or 4 minutes for everyone, if you need to stretch your legs for a minute or two and go and grab, a quick drink of water. But we're going to have you guys tell us how you engaged your learners in an online environment. How did you engage your learners during the COVID remote learning? So we're going to post our Padlet. And so I know Amanda said her backside's numb and mine is too. So I'm going to stand for a second or two, but we'll meet back in 3 minutes, but we'll leave this posted so you guys can see. And then there's a couple of other questions we'll come back and answer in a minute. So I'm going to stop my video for a second so you don't see me stretch. And I'm going to put myself on mute. And that you can't, hopefully, so everyone should still be able to see Ashley's screen so you can see what the Padlet looks like for those of you that weren't able to get in.
Yes, and it just scroll. All of these will be here. And the link to this Padlet is in our resources as well. So you will be able to come back and read these to get ideas. But when we finish our presentation, I will turn off the response. So you won't be able to edit or add to it, but you will be able to access what is in here. And I use Padlet with students as well. It's a great place to add these resources in and just have them like you are right now, building this curated resource to come back to, or to just share ideas, post assignments. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hop off of the screen. And you can still, if you're still adding within this Padlet, feel free to go ahead and add. The website is there. It is a bit.ly link. Bit.ly is very picky and it's case sensitive, so just make sure that you include the dashes between share and tell. And if you ever see a bit.ly link that has lowercase and uppercase letters, just know that it is case sensitive.
And I had put the bit.ly link also in the chat to everyone. So yeah, so everyone should be able to see that again as well. So let me make sure I am. So I think we're in the right spot, right, Ashley, when we talk about student engagement?
Yes, yes. And it should be
Oh,
your slides are.
Forgot to hit share.
Share.
Sorry, that little thing. Yeah, it's.
And I think I edited this slide at the very last minute. I just wanted to share that there are 3 different types of student engagement. There's the student to content engagement, student to student, and student to instructor. And so when we talk about student engagement, it's not just keeping the student's attention and making sure that they're participating and doing their work, but that they are fully engaged with the content, with each other, and with you.
Yes, you are spot on. So I'm going to move us a little faster. We've got about, what, 25 minutes left. So hopefully, I think we'll be able to kind of burn through it. So one of my best techniques that I have found with my online learners, moving from K-12 schools into the graduate school was hard for me to move straight from in-person, face-to-face learning most of the time to completely 100% online. And I had a very hard time making sure that my students had a chance to connect with each other. Now that we are 100% online, that was one of the things that I noticed in evaluations, was that students didn't always feel like they had a chance to really connect with each other. So Dr. Whittingham asked me years ago, I think it was 2012 or 2013, to teach as an adjunct downstairs with the undergraduate program, doing a disciplinary literacy class. And when I told him, I said, Dr. Whittingham, I don't have a literacy background. I have a secondary biology degree, so I can teach science, 712. I said, and I have a library science degree that is K-12, but it's not an actual literacy background. I can tell you how to organize your books. I can build a great collection. I can do all of those things, but I don't really know, other than the research process, how to engage with literature. And he said, I actually need you for that. He said, literacy in the content area is opening up the idea to your other content areas other than English or literacy, the concept or idea that you do need reading and writing to go on in your science classroom, your math classroom, your art classroom. So I learned about literature circles then, and I have been ecstatic to see the development that has happened in the community and connections that have happened. So I just embedded, these are all research-based. There's lots of different types of literature circles. I have strictly been doing literature circles for text in my own courses where it's peer-led. I have different groups and they're all reading different things at the same time, but I've assigned roles to them, and these are even adult learners, and I have just absolutely loved it. But I liked this typology because it also shows you can do even a learning club. This is more, so I'm down on the Casey line. I don't know if you guys can see. But if you're trying to get disengaged readers, and this does not have to just be with novels, this could be with anything that they're interested in, a shared interest grouping, doesn't have to be literature based, but the students can have lots of different options for discussion, but they can also create visual and written responses to what they have learned together. So there's lots of different ideas out there. So I've just kind of put that together in a chart, but I'm not going to go over all of those today for sake of time. I want to make sure that we get there. There was another great slide share. In my courses, I use the discussion director, and now mind you, I have graduate students. So once I've showed them the very first time how the literature circle works, if they're not familiar with it, they pretty much take it and go with it. I don't have to meet with them every week, but there does usually need to be one person in charge just to get the discussions going. They each have a separate room in our Blackboard course. And so they meet, they get to decide when they're going to meet. And they always ask, how long does a literature circle need to take? And I tell them it usually ends up being about an hour, regardless of if we're doing one chapter or two chapters at a time, or if they're even just sharing different research topics that maybe they have done like a short research project. Because once they get going, they really have some of the best discussions. And even when they are reading the exact same text, every group pulls out different things, and I'm always amazed. And one of my students one time, I think they were testing me to see if I actually listen, and I do. So at the end, a lot of times they'll say, Dr. Shaw, you should give us, 5 bonus points. And so I do listen. I do recommend, if you were going to try this with smaller or younger students, this might be an opportunity. If you have to move completely online, this might give you an opportunity to meet small group with your different learners, to give them a different opportunity. Maybe one group has a different level of reading, so you might take a shorter text and just kind of model the discussion for them. I found in my classes, I don't always use the summarizer role, because what I've found is during the discussions that mine take place, the summarizer kind of checks out of the discussion itself because they're so busy getting down what everybody else is saying. So I don't always use that. The passage picker, I don't really use, but we have used it. I think it's better for like novels. I do use a word wizard. I think I call it Word Warrior. It's a great vocabulary building opportunity for my graduate students to find words or phrases that they see that are thematic within a chapter. So I do like the Word Wizard. I don't really use the Illustrator one, but I will say in K-12 learning, that was one of the best opportunities. I was working with a young man who he never passed the benchmark test. So they asked me, he had an extra class period. I think he had gotten out of football, maybe he had gotten in trouble. And so he came to me in the library every day. And so we started reading, Watsons Go to Birmingham. It was one of the best opportunities. I just remember I set Christian over, I had an audio version of the book and let him listen. And if you've ever read the book, one of the funniest scenes is when Kenny and his brother, they were scraping the car off. They're up in Michigan, it snowed, and the older brother is looking at himself in the mirror and he ends up kissing the mirror and his lips get stuck. And I will never forget this kid who was always disengaged. He was 7th grade, just pretty much on the edge of probably being expelled, I guess. I don't know. And he illustrated that scene. And so after that, I don't know, he and I just built a much better relationship, but he wasn't even in an actual discussion group. I just gave him one of my roll sheets and he did that. And so that was my best experience, but I don't use that one with my graduate students. I do use the connections. This is one of the best ways for my students. A lot of times in a group, if they have 4, I'll have one discussion director, one word warrior, and then I might have 2 or 3 connectors because they can develop connections, self-to-text and text-to-text, that even though they have the same role, they don't all have the same life experiences. So that is one of the best things that I can do for my students, especially that want to be future school librarians. I can put them in these diverse settings. I might pair, a couple of K-5 teachers with some secondary teachers, and they can all get different perspectives to make sure that they're all learning from each other. So so those are just slides, and that's embedded in there, so you'll be able to see that. Okay, so Ashley, I think you're up, and we've got a few minutes left, so get on it with Flipgrid.
Okay, I'm gonna try to talk like super fast. And so Flipgrid is a great way to interact with your students instead of using a type it out discussion board. Flipgrid is completely free, and there are a couple of tutorial videos in here that I'm not going to show you, but it shows you how to set up your Flipgrid board. And then I've also included a video that shows some of the tools that are available. What I really like with being able to use Flipgrid is some students can talk to you all day long and explain content all day long, but when you ask them to put it to paper, it becomes difficult. So providing multiple ways for students to show their learning, especially in an online environment, is really great. So I alternate between actual discussion boards where they type and respond to each other and using Flipgrid. So my students, and again, this is at the college level, but I've done it in K-12 as well. And I even had kindergartners using Flipgrid. And during this pandemic time, my church was actually wanting a way for people to submit their videos or responding to questions from the pastor, and I shared Flipgrid with them. So if the my church members can use Flipgrid, anybody can use it. It's super easy. But my students are required to post a response and reply to 2 people. So for one class that I have this summer, I have about 10 students in it. So I should only see about 30 videos posted. However, they really get into it. This discussion here was actually due today. So they had to post their initial response yesterday and replies to their classmates today by midnight. They were already recording their responses to this particular discussion on Friday. So I can look at the bottom here and see that Paige had posted her response. And I can already see how many times they're viewed. It also tells me how many hours of engagement are happening within that one particular discussion. So it's a really great way for students to interact and respond with each other. And then I listen to all of their posts, and I also jump in and share. And it's just really nice to be able to really quickly and verbally respond to the students. I do have students that go back and they'll listen to everything that someone has posted to them, and they ask a lot of questions of each other. And based off of this, we actually ended up sharing on a curation board as well. When students are talking in their discussions, they're mentioning all of these great resources like we've done here today. And, you know, we've heard, oh, what's the link for that? Can you share that? Where did you find that document? So I created a Wakelet board, which is very similar to Padlet for one of my classes. So as they share resources, they have to cite a reference material. So either the book they're reading for class or a website, a journal article. So as they share those resources, they actually go put it in our Wakelet board. And then all of those resources they've curated, all of those journal articles that they've read, are all available for students to use. So I use digital curation as engagement for student to student and student to content as well. You can curate all of these resources for your lessons in one place. So instead of sharing a ton of links for your students, providing it in a visual way makes it more engaging for them. They're used to seeing content presented this way. Think about how Instagram looks to them. How does, I know my daughter uses Pinterest on the daily. So how does Pinterest look to them? How does YouTube look when they go to YouTube? So presenting the information in ways that they can use. And what's great about both of these tools is that you can set it up so that it is COPA and SEPA certified or compliant, because they don't have to log in. So when you went to my Padlet, some of you, I saw your name because that means you have a Padlet account. Otherwise, it just says anonymous. So if I use this with students and I want to know who they are, I always have them put like their first initial and last name so that I can differentiate who has posted in these areas. You'll see in this one where it has the health class stress management resources. That was some resources that I had actually built for a teacher when they needed, I was instructional tech at the time, and they wanted some resources for stress management. And you can see that I color coded these. They're purple, green, blue, because I color coded them at was it an article, something that they needed to read? Was it an activity, or was it a video? So when the teacher actually used these resources, he would say, okay, go to the Padlet today, and I want you to find at least one video, one article, and one activity to do. Or today, your only assignment is to go and find an activity from the board. So it's a great way to provide a multiple means for students to get their content. They're still all getting the same information. It's just in different formats, and it makes it a little bit more engaging as well. And what's really great about this is you can turn these curation tools into digital hallways, which is something a student of mine did in an online learning environment. You don't have a hallway to post student work to. And when a student does something that they're really proud of, you want to be able to share it. So putting it on Padlet or Wakelet is super easy, and both of those have ways that you can share the links really quickly, and they both have QR codes. Wakelet plays very nicely with Google Classroom. As a matter of fact, it integrates into Google Classroom. It also integrates into Flipgrid, so you can app smash and use both of those together. And for like one of my research projects, I have certain articles that I want the students to read, and then they need to find additional research. So I put all of those articles in the Wakelet, and I said, here's the articles you need to read here, instead of just providing a ton of links for them to go to, so they can choose the order that they want to read the articles. So you can use your digital curation boards in multiple forms. I will say Padlet is free scribe. You get 3 boards for free. And then you can pay to have additional boards. However, if you like interacted with my board today, that one doesn't count as one of your boards. So if I share a board or someone else has it and I like what they've used and I add it to my boards, it doesn't count, if that makes sense. Wakelet is completely free. So it's available, and you can add docs, PDFs, images, videos, same thing with Padlet. So it's really nice that you can put multiple things in. The example that I have here is videos for a math teacher that wanted more videos like Khan Academy, but not Khan Academy, so that she could provide additional support. So the students knew to go to that Wakelet board, and they had choices of different YouTube channels and different videos that they could go look at if they needed additional support after a lesson. And I mentioned SEPA and COPA on Padlet and Wakelet. Flipgrid is also SEPA and COPA compliant, but there are a multitude of federal laws and student safety laws to consider when using digital tools. For example, Mentimeter is okay to use because it doesn't require students to log in. When you have students log into a website, you're assuming responsibility as an educator. So you are assuming parental responsibility for that. And many of them, the websites, if you read the fine print, it says to not sign up if you're under the age of 13. So there are tons of different laws out there just to keep your students' privacy safe. So check your tools to make sure that what you're using doesn't have any age restrictions. If it's a single sign-on, it's typically safer because that means that they don't actually have to create a login for it. They can sign in, like using Clever, where it signs them in through Google Classroom or through Microsoft. And then there's a website called Student Privacy Pledge. It's studentprivacypledge.org, actually. And it actually has a list of all of the tech tools that have signed this privacy pledge, saying that they pledge to not give out your student information, that they will do their best in working with third-party vendors to ensure that those vendors keep your privacy, student privacy safe, that they don't retain your information, they don't sell your information. So whenever I start looking at new tech tools and people are sharing all of these things around, I go look there to see if they've signed that student privacy pledge. to make sure that those tech tools are safe. Just because it's a great tool and everyone's using it doesn't mean that it's the best and the safest for your students. I talked super fast.
You did. I'm very impressed. So go back for just a second. Somebody did ask, what would we recommend then for those students that are over 13?
If they're over 13, I would still be very careful in having them create logins for particular sites, because according to CEPA, when a student is using a website for educational purposes, the teacher then takes on the role of the parent, so you assume responsibility.
Right, and I was going to say, with our kid blog activity, that was 6th grade, and we sent home a parent. They had to sign whether or not they gave permission. And I know in Greenbrier, a lot of times, if there was something universal that we wanted to use, our tech department, like, they were the ones who created all of the Google accounts for the students, and like our trying to think, K-5 learners didn't even have email access, but later I think they finally kind of pulled up on the reins for that. But I know that our middle school students could only email within our district. So like my sons could email me because I had a Greenbrier email address, but other parents, that didn't work in our district, they could not email back and forth. And then it seems like when they got to eighth or ninth grade, it must have been 8th grade because that was a different building. Then they had they kind of opened up the email settings a little bit more. And then finally at the high school level, I know that they had full access. So there are definite ways to put those limits on there. So I would recommend checking with your technology department and seeing if they know.
Yeah, that's also what I was going to say. I mentioned a single sign-on server, which is like Clever. When you go to a website and it pops up and it says sign in with Google or sign in with Facebook, that means that you are not actually creating a login for that site. So that site's really not getting much of your information because you're logging into Google and Google saying, I give this, you're getting permission, but you're only getting the surface permission. So if you have a single sign-on server, like Clever or Google Classroom, and if it integrates that way, then that's a safer option. If it doesn't, that's definitely something that you could advocate for within your district and say, we really want to make sure that we're keeping our students safe, and having a single sign-on server is something that we can do. You can also share that with your IT department because they may have the capabilities. It just may mean that it's not been used before, so they haven't put it into play.
True. Okay, so let me go back and share my screen, and we're going to try, because we've got about 5 minutes left. Oh, goodness. So our last bit, we just wanted to go back over the graduate programs. And I know somebody had asked which course Ms. Cooksey had taught where they had to design their syllabus. That was in the instructional technology program. We've got a Master of Science. There's 3 different tracks, and we are the only program in the state of Arkansas so far certified to add an endorsement to your current teaching license in online teaching and learning. And so those are the courses that Ashley typically teaches. We also have a multimedia design and development track, but you can also just do a graduate certificate that's only 15 hours if you want to add the endorsement, maybe if you already have a master's degree, or if you're just looking for a step on your pay scale. And then we also have a computer science track. It's more for K-12 educators who don't necessarily have a computer science background. But those are all in the instructional technology. But then there is also a new digital age teaching and learning master's, or even an ed specialist. And that one's in a different department. But we do have all of these different programs out there. So we hope if anyone has any questions, when I'm going to share. So here's our resources, citations. We'll add, I know that Ashley had a few more to add, and we can still do that to our slides. Here is.
I already added them.
Oh,
it's
perfect.
just not showing up because you haven't refreshed your screen. So there's a couple that are already in there, and if I missed any, then I can go back and fix those later.
Yes. Okay. So here is our bit.ly. I was trying to find our chat. It moves on me, so then I don't see it.
I can pop it in there.
Okay. If you want to, that would be lovely. So there are our email addresses. If you guys need to ask anything or do anything, we are happy to share any information with you. So it's awfully quiet in there. It is 3:01. So I hope everybody had a great time. Thank you. You guys are very kind. Don't forget to fill out the Google form. That is your professional development credit. You will have to keep, I think, answering things and then going next. And there is an evaluation in there. And Ashley and I would love honest feedback. Tell us what you liked. Tell us what you didn't like. Because that was the first time we had done that. And I enjoyed it, like I said, but I am very tired. If anyone wants to stick around for a minute or two, we'll be here, but otherwise, have a great day. I think Ashley just got kicked out. She said she's reconnecting. So if you have any specific questions for Ashley, she'll be back in a minute. But I'll stay in for just a bit, and if anyone wants to ask anything, you are welcome to do that. Erica was asking, did anyone have any other ideas for Flipgrid or Padlet? Trying to think. There's a lot of tools out there. Maybe. Cheslin, you're welcome. Ashley's still trying to reconnect. It is kind of funny. When technology works, it works very well. And when it doesn't. Thank you, Leanna, for the evaluation, and Elise. I'm just looking at all these names. I'm so excited. Trying to say Latil, Albert. I think we probably can email out at the end. So we'll try to email out those two links again. Jennifer, I look forward to hearing from you. Wendy, we'll try and get the link emailed. It should be in the chat. So the slideshow is there. And yes, when you complete the PD form, the link for the evaluation will be at the end. Karen, the resources for the visually impaired students, that one is, that was from the, let me see if I can go back. I keep ending up with this blank screen. I think it is.
I'm back now.
Are you? Yay. So the visually impaired one, is that the OC or dcmp.org?
Yes.
Right? Okay. I had .com written down.
And I see someone in the chat said Flash is going to be discontinued. I wonder how that will affect Flipgrid. Flipgrid doesn't use Flash.
That was a good question. Yes. So Regina said she can't. Okay, Regina, let me see if I can send it to you. Doctor Who, you can click in anytime and chat with us.
Were there any other questions that I missed? I got kicked out of the room.
Right, I saw that. Somebody asked, other than Flipgrid and Padlet, do you have any other tool ideas? There's so many out there for connection. I'm trying to
student engagement.
think. I'm trying to do two things at once and it's not working very well. My multitasking skills. So there.
Yeah, so Wakelet is also good, and I just kind of showed a really quick clip of Wakelet. That Wakelet is great for student engagement, and because they can actually type in it, sort of like we did with Padlet as well. I'm trying to. There's tons of really great tools to use within. But my mind is like, has just all of a sudden gone blank on student engagement. And I've even seen I had a student that used Padlet as her virtual hallway for students to submit work. And so they were submitting a presentation that they did. And some of them even had done it as a podcast. So it was available where they were just able to do an oral presentation rather than a video presentation. And students can do the recording for a podcast just on their phone in a voice memo and then save it and submit it. So, and that's also within Flipgrid, you're able to do that. And if you watch the video of the tools that I show, I talk about it, but it has a whiteboard where you can write on the whiteboard or a blackboard. So if I have super shy students that have cleared it with me ahead of time, and there are different filters too. So there's even one that looks pixelated like Minecraft. So they can use the Minecraft filter or the blackboard or whiteboard and make their screen completely black so that their face is not showing, but they're still talking. That's a great way to engage students as well because they're able to share. But I understand that some students are shy. And I've even done a Flipgrid where they had to post a discussion, but I made it themed. So they had to wear their favorite, I think it was like a TV character. So I had like Carol Baskin and there was some of the Golden Girls. So they had to dress up in a way and still present their content. So even though it seems kind of silly to do that, the students were really excited to be able to kind of show some of their personality in the video. And you'll notice I mentioned, you know, keeping that authenticity in your lessons and your recordings and sharing with your students. In the video that I did for how to use the tools in Flipgrid, I'm actually outside, and in the middle of the video, I'm apologizing and trying to move because the sun has started to come through the trees. So it gives me this really nice, beautiful halo. But it kind of, the students were laughing with me. I had one video where my cat walks into the screen and then lays down on my keyboard. So they were able to meet one of my cats that way. But tech tools, there are, you know, so many that there are available. But like I said, I try to check the Student Privacy Pledge website. And there's another student privacy similar to the Student Privacy Pledge. I don't think it's as thorough, and I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I will look in my book by Thomas Murray and see what that is and post. I'll just add that link into our slides.
Thank you, Ashley. Well, so I'm monitoring the chat. Oh, good. So it looks like everyone now is, so Karen was asking about getting a copy of the chat log. I know that the recording of this is going to be posted on the College of Ed website. So Melissa, I'm not sure if you're out there. She's our behind the scenes host. Do you know if the chat gets posted with it?
Not that we planned on. We planned on just doing the video, and that should be up in like a week or two. I'm gonna put the link here in the chat of where they can go to find that. And actually all the PDs that we've done this summer, the videos for all of those will be up.
Okay, so I'm
You
trying
can-
to.
You can actually save the chat. If you go into the chats, you can click in the corner and there's an option to save the chat.
Thank you, Devin.
Uh-huh.
She's the granddaughter of Miss Pam. I'm so excited that she actually watched Thomas and Joseph. Thomas was much smaller, but Mr. Paul, are your grandparents doing well?
Yeah.
Good.
They're
I'm
doing good.
glad to hear that.
He mows all the time. It's his favorite thing to do.
My
Yeah.
husband does too.
He likes to fix things.
Yes.
They still bicker with each other, so they're doing fine.
That's good. I think that keeps everything healthy. Now, my husband complains all the time about mowing, and if he hadn't mowed we have 7 acres, and I swear we had a normal sized yard, and then he's mowed a strip wider, I don't know, over the last 20 some years. So yeah, now it's like a 6-hour deal, and we have 3 boys. And so every time he complains, I'm like, why don't you put one of the other kids, I don't know, on the mower? You know, got a 20-year-old, 17-year-old. He's like, no, what if they mess it up? No, he likes to mow. Trust me, I let them vacuum anytime they want to, even when they don't.
Hey, Devin, since some people are having difficulty saving the chat, if you want to save it and email it to either Dr. Shaw or I, we can put a link to it in just our presentation resources. That way it's there too, if you don't mind, if you want to do that.
That's fine. I'll rename it and put it on mine.
Thank you. We'd be very happy to do that. All right. Well, guys are just hanging out with us. I think I've had a lovely time, but thankfully I'm loving this grocery pickup. Where was this 20 years ago when my kids were little?